Let's check in with the doc and look at things with a wider lens. Pastor Richards on OMG.
All right, joining me right now is Pastor Richards. Good morning, Pastor. Pastor, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear
Okay.
you. Good morning, Denny.
Good morning, good morning. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well,
Doing well?
actually. I have a full plate today, so let me get... When I say a full plate, not related to the morning radio, I know I set aside my little time for that, but outside of that, I do run a very, very busy day. Try to get started very early. Give a shout out to Mr. Weeks. I want to really shout him up. He's... I come from the same village, basically, that he comes from. The Weeks, I listen to him all the time, and I say what you want. You have to like the fact that he talks about in a way that should inspire a lot of people here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Talks about, some of his vulnerabilities, including his sight, and talked about glasses, talked about shoes, and, things that people can identify with. So shout out to Mr. Weeks. Shout out to Jerry also this morning. Yeah, from time to time I do message Jerry privately. And, I like messaging people privately rather than see what I have to say, publicly. I'd much rather just say, let me have your number. Why not message you privately and say X, Y, or Z to you? So shout out to Jerry this morning. And you had a story going, started on Tuesday, I think it was, and just
on Wednesday.
Yes, and give me a little bit of direction for the rest of my week. I've been trying to talk about what is on paper regarding the protection of children in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and not so much doing commentary as I normally would do commentary, but to put information out there. So I'm putting out more information than I am giving commentary, if you would allow me, because I think it is necessary to put the information out there. I think yesterday, what I shared from the act that is governing the care and adoption of St. Vincent, of children in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, that particular act that I referenced. As I started sharing about this, I got it on Facebook, and people in, should I say, high places, said, they appreciate this, they appreciate knowing about what is on paper for the protection of children in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And that is the issue that we face. It's on paper. It's a good act. I said that yesterday. In fact, yesterday, I remember saying that the administration of the act, if you want to know who is responsible, in whose lap it falls, the Section 2 of the act deals with that, and it says the minister. Right now, it is the Ministry of Mobilization. So that minister would be the Minister of Mobilization, under whom you will have a Director of Family Services. And so at least that gives the framework of responsibility portfolio, who you can report to, who has purview of all relates to the care of children, protection and adoption of, care and adoption, but really that care means protection, and that adoption could mean removal from homes. So that's just the nuance in the wording. And then further in the act, I think I said this earlier too, that there is a mandatory requirement of reporting. If a person has knowledge, let me just go word for word, if a person has knowledge or has reasonable grounds to suspect, so listen St. Vincent and the Grenadines, all right? If you have knowledge or reasonable grounds, and it doesn't say to know for sure, okay? And this is what I like about the act. If you suspect that a child is in need of care and protection in any of the circumstances mentioned above, like in sexual matters, physical abuse, emotional abuse, financial abuse, or any of these matters, if you suspect, something ain't look right with this child, boy, something going. And this is very key, because one of the problems that we have with this matter that you brought to the table, Daniel, is not so much that people don't see and all of that and don't know, but it is, if something is not reported, if how would the director is not ubiquitous in every place at every time. The director is not in every home. Director can't know every child that is abused in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So you can't blame the ministry and you can't blame the directorate. And sometimes when people find out something, they might call the police, but where does it go from there? But the Act actually says what you should do. If you suspect, and again, not know for sure, but you have reasonable grounds to suspect, then without delay, and this is the language, without delay, you should report or cause to be reported the circumstances to the director. And again, that is referring to the Director of Family Services. So there is a mandate to report. Now, furthermore, in addition to that, Daniel, the reports may be made anonymously. So there is provision if you don't want your name mentioned, if you don't want to get anything, if you're a family member and it could mash up the family and you don't want your name called, provision is made to make the report anonymously.
Pastor, sorry to interject. I have
no,
to.
No, never be sorry. This is your baby.
Yeah, but I like when you're allowed to flow. But I really need to interject. What if the director is in fact notified? If a report is made, what?
I'm coming to that.
Okay.
There's some hiccups there. I'm taking this a little. Daniel, this is, like you said, this is not going to be a 9-day little story, okay? So I took up and I messaged you also and said, Daniel, I'm with you on this, all right? So I'm going to try to bring it. But I'm going to take it stage by stage, but I will bear that question in mind. What happens? Your question is what happens when the director knows? And a number of persons have said to me, I have brought this matter and that matter and that matter to the attention of the director. I have teachers and other people have said we have had students, we have brought the matter to the director. I will come to that and tell you what happens. It won't happen today. I won't tell you today. Okay.
That's fine. I won't forget it. Trust me, it's there on my mind, so that's fine.
Okay, Your Majesty. Now listen.
Oh my gosh.
If you fail, you have illegal, according to this act, Daniel. You actually possession of knowledge or suspicion on reasonable grounds brings to your doorstep a legal obligation. And that is why I say children in St. Vincent are well protected by the law. Because the law says let me read it, if you fail to comply with this reporting requirement, if you know of a child or if you suspect that a child is in need of care and protection, that is the language. If you know that, then you commit an offense if you fail to comply. And you are liable, it says, on summary conviction to a fine not exceeding $5,000. So that's a great provision. The question is it going to be followed up? Because if you know of a child, the government or the administration or the people who put this in place take this matter of child care so seriously that a fine up to $5,000 can be imposed on people who know or suspect, on reasonable grounds, that a child is being abused and they do nothing about it. You could be fined $5,000. I am not sure that people in St. Vincent and the Grenadines know this. I am not sure. You have a legal obligation to report the thing through the channels to the director, and or not just the $5,000, but to a term of imprisonment not exceeding 3 months. So you could actually go to jail if you fail to meet the reporting requirement. People of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, you have a legal obligation to report what you know about the various abuses of children, sexual, physical, beat up, emotional, and otherwise. You have an obligation, and you could go to jail. Or you could pay a lot of money if you know stuff, if you're in the home and you cover it up or whatever. You could go to jail. Now, to answer part of your question, what is supposed to happen when the director get this information? So I think I'm at the place where I can now answer that. what is supposed to happen? So you go to the channel, you didn't call the police, and you didn't call whatever, you went, maybe because you are following what I'm doing now, and you realize, boy, let me get the Ministry of Mobilization, and let me ask for the Director of Family Services. Let me say what I know. Some people call social welfare. That will get you there also. Numbers government listing is available. All right, so no problems getting there. So once the report has been lodged, chances are you probably will not speak to the director, but you would get the word reported into that office. They might deem either that no further action is necessary, or based on their expertise and their assessment, that a further investigation is necessary. That depending on the severity of the matter, they might deem that the removal of the child is necessary. And once that is the case, then the real legal aspect begin to kick in, because once you remove the child, I think I said yesterday, there is such power granted already and conferred upon the Director of Family Services that given the nature of the report, the Director of Family Services can direct that her officers enter a home, search the home. This is real power. Search the home. You don't even need the court order that is going to ensue later. You can immediately go. This is the kind of urgency that the Act actually gives this matter, that you, without waiting till, let us say a report comes in on Friday evening, there's no court, can't wait until Monday morning. The child might be already totally compromised by Monday morning. So the director can immediately go to the home, I said yesterday, and remove that child and any other child, depending on the circumstances, from the home. And then after that now, an application for what is called a care order. So you don't wait for the application to clear the court before you move the child. You move the child, and you have the authority to do that, but then you have to make an application for care order. And I think I refer to what that means. Some time ago, I said sometime ago, I think it was Wednesday, I said the care order is when will be issued when it is deemed that the child would need what the Act calls child care services, whether it's a boarding home or boys' home, and there are issues with these, but I'll get to the different homes. Again, y'all bear with me. I will get to all of this little bit by little bit by little bit. I know you want to ask questions. Where are the homes? What's going on in the homes? What if you remove a boy off the street and place him in a particular home? Or the boys' home, there's a boys' home up Liberty Lodge. What happens there? Let me get to that. All right? So you will do an application for the care order to protect the child. All right? So what is supposed to happen now, Daniel, when the report is made, that you are mandated to make, and if you don't make it, you could be fined up to $5,000 and go to jail. So you have to make the report. So once this report is made to the director, then what should happen once they deem further action is necessary? They are actually supposed to deploy officer, social worker, to visit the caseworker, same thing, to visit the residence of the child or other places that is frequented by the child. They take the child to a place that the director considers to be safe. They're supposed to listen to this interview and examine the child. And that examination, again, you might need an order for physical examination, particularly in matters of sexual, the suspicion of sexual molestation or the matter of physical abuse. You will need again, this thing is so complicated. You need documentation, you need proof, you need to do all of this. So you have to have a doctor examine the child. I have been familiar with cases where this is done. This is why I'm speaking like this. It's not off the top of my head, stuff that I am familiar with, that I know. Then the next step is that you have to interview the parents of the child. All of this has to be done. Or anybody else who is caring for the child, people who, teachers or people who provide social services to the child. All of this information has to be gathered. In other words, you build a case. You check out what's really going on with this child. It is supposed to be thorough, and you gather all of the evidence that may be necessary to complete the investigation. Now think, Denise, think with me, everybody. To do this for one child, can you begin to imagine all that is involved in doing a thorough case investigation for a child? But because the children matter, every single report needs to be taken seriously. Because you never know. You can't slight it and pass it off and say, I'll go home and make up. You have to take, according to the Act, by the way, according to the Act, you have to take the report seriously. So as far as I'm concerned, this is an excellent provision. So you asked me, Daniel, so what's the problem with that? And I'm glad you asked me. Because immediately you can see one of the major problems with this is going to be what I call, 2 days ago, I call legs on the ground. Just the army of officers that will be needed. We are not talking about one child in St. Vincent that probably will fall in this category. Quite a number of children. If people take reporting seriously, if people, listen to me, if people take reporting seriously, there will be a lot of reports, I suspect, that will be funneled into the Directorate of Family Services. So what's the problem there? For each report, you are going to need to deploy a field officer, a case worker, a social worker. And from what I just described, what the Act requires takes a lot of time. And therein lies one of the major issues we have with care and the protection of children and citizens and grandees, what I called on Tuesday the micro-reality. The micro-reality does not match the promises of the macro structure. The macro structure is highly aspirational. Aspirational in that it hopes, it aspires to take good care of the children. And it falls through for a number of reasons which I will begin to highlight and which we need to correct. So the first thing that we need to correct this mandate of reporting. And we need to, the thing is, it won't be corrected unless it is enforced. Until that, what the Act provides for in penalizing people who know and fail to report, all it takes is to really penalize 1 or 2 persons, and then you realize, boy, I have to report this. You can't hide it, you can't go wink, you can't cover it up. So before we begin to jump and blame the government and blame the authorities and blame the ministry, the first question we have to ask is, how is the reporting going? Are people actually reporting? Is it that they did not know? Well, if they've been listening to this program, they now know where to report and how to report. And then they now know that if they fail to report, there are stiff penalties that can be put against them. But then at the same time, I think that we can prime the pump, we can push things if the ministry and those who have the power, if they know of situations in which, that a child is abused and people ought to reasonably have had knowledge of this abuse and did not abuse it, did not report it, that they begin to make an example out of them, then that will prime the pump and there will be more reporting. So that's one problem. Before we blame the ministry and blame the structure, let's ask, are people reporting? And the next thing that I realize is a problem here is this whole matter of the fact that we realize to properly handle a case, because you can't go willy-nilly into a home and pull a child out. I mean, I haven't even gotten to the court with all of the orders that have to be issued before you can properly deal with a child. But before you can even do that, you have to have the backing, you have to have the evidential support to be able to go to the court and say, this is why we want to make this move or that move or that move. And that requires very thorough, painstaking, and time-consuming investigation, which will beg the question of resources. Is there really adequacy of resources to do this ideally? And then a matter that I've been engaged in and I have spoken about is the efficiency of the case officers themselves, their level of training and the extent to which they're executing the training that they are given. And these are fundamental matters. Do we have enough caseworkers? I think we know the answers. Are they thorough in investigating every case? I point you to the boys' home, and you can get some answers there, for example, just as a starter. Is it their fault, or is it that their load is too heavy? These are questions that we have to ask. I trust that in sharing this information, that our eyes are being opened as to how to better care for our children in St. Vincent and the Grenadines and protect them. And maybe some child is going to be saved through this program. Daniel, again, thank you for bringing it to the table. Good job.
Thank you, Pastor. Anything you want to add in closing?
Yeah, well, Father's Day is coming up.
Yes, it is. Right, and you won't be with us tomorrow because I do want to touch on that tomorrow.
Right. But I was conflicted this morning. Should I continue along this line with the children because I felt the information was important, or should I talk about the role of fathers? And the two are not necessarily divorced. In fact, just to say a shout out to fathers, you are like a hero and a giant in the children's life. In the research that I have done, which is a lot, to be honest, just to be fair, I mean, I won't just say it if it's not well documented. The presence of a father in a home and the function, and not just a physical presence, but the felt presence of a father in a home is deemed by many researchers to be the principal determinant of the outcomes for that child. So let me say it again. This is why men are really big. Men are giants and men are heroes. Because by your presence and what you do in a home to your child, you determine educational outcomes, whether a child is convicted, whether a child goes on drugs, whether a child becomes a preteen or teen mother or father. All of these things, educational outcomes and occupational outcomes, are actually determined by the presence and participation of a father in a home. So men, you are giants, men, you are heroes, men, you matter. So make this Sunday count. Happy Father's Day in advance. Take care, everybody.
All right, thanks, Pastor. Thank you.
Bye.
Happy Father's Day in advance to you.
Oh, gosh. Thank you.
All right, have a good one.
Let's check in with the doc and look at things with a wider lens. Pastor Richards on OMG.